value and all hierarchy results in absolute chaos, of course. Yeah. Well, that doesn't work. We've seen that happen before, and as Aristotle actually says, the end result of that is chaos, which is worse than any of the other forms of society, right? Because you end up with what Hobbes and Locke try to describe as a theoretical state of nature, which I think Hobbes is closer to the truth there. It's dog eat dog. Who's going to be the head? I mean, when we see different novelists try to depict the future after an apocalyptic event of any sort, we get things like Mad Max. We get the Road. We get horrible situations where basically humanity can't survive. All we're living off of is old canned goods hidden by different people in underground caches. And when that runs out, we're dead basically, except for maybe cannibalism for a while, right? So all of those. You're familiar with The Road, yes? No? The novel, The Road. There's a movie too. I haven't seen the movie. I couldn't imagine watching the movie, but The Road. This is just this is post-apocalyptic, and if there were such a successful outcome of this deconstruction, taking apart other people's narratives, wherever they show up, by looking at the story and taking it apart and showing that any type of story of that sort can only be in conflict with itself. And so you just have to bring out the conflicts, this inherent conflicts in the story, to basically decrease the ability of other individuals to believe that story. You want to undercut it, make a joke out of it, so that no one can believe it and follow that hierarchical system anymore, right? No one wants to do it. Well, this is just it's unspecified. You don't know whether there's a virus or there's a nuclear holocaust or what. All you know is that civilization is completely gone, except for the father and son. Actually, I think in the book there's a whole family, and then the father separates from the family in order to try to set out and find something. Another community, perhaps, somewhere. Do not read this before bed. You will not enjoy your rest, because this is horrible. People eating other people, for example. Cannibalism is an end result of all of this. So there's lots of those kinds of things out there. Games, lots of games, right? How many of the games that we play on the internet are going through a village, or what was it? Las Vegas, I think, was one of them. They're going through, the roads are all crumpled up, and there's weird animals because of nuclear materials or whatever, and you're basically trying to find anything, old batteries, old thing, that's post-apocalyptic, right? Who wants to live in that kind of thing? Well, so deconstruction is essentially an attempt to confuse everybody and take apart all the narratives. Foucault is quite a different type of philosopher, and he's more into construction of things, the archaeology of knowledge, for example. And if you get a chance, I have not read the history of sexuality, which is supposed to be quite famous, but the one that I really like is the history of madness, which goes back at least to the Middle Ages and talks about homelessness, basically. The mental illness associated with people. You're always going to have a certain amount of a natural population that basically can't survive on their own. Might basically be unhelpful in that regard. And yet, what does the society do with them? It depends on the narrative, right? Well, these people are clearly sinners, right? Well, it's their fault. These people are possessed, by demons. These people are mentally ill. It could be, their fault because they're drug addicted, or it could be not their fault because their mother was addicted, and as a result they end up with natural incompetence because of what happened to them in utero and so on. So I highly recommend Foucault over Derrida. Derrida is very confusing on purpose. Tries to be confusing. That's the method of deconstruction, essentially. Now, I want to bring up something that's absolutely hilarious in this regard. There were a lot of people that thought that the postmodernists were really just ridiculous. They're not actually communicating anything serious. There's nothing we could really learn from them. We really should instead be concentrating on science, because that gives us knowledge. But so, a scientist named Sokal, Alan Sokal, being convinced that the postmodernists were just full of nonsense, created an algorithm, a computer algorithm, and filled the algorithm's database with postmodern terms. And then he ran the program and created an essay, a machine-generated essay using postmodern terms. And he submitted that essay to a postmodern journal. And the postmodern journal was thrilled to get it. For one thing, he's a famous scientist. We've got a scientist writing for our journal, and they really liked the article, so they published the article. At the same time it was published, he published an article in a science magazine, a science journal, explaining what he had done to this postmodern journal, right? And of course the scientific world laughed and thought, aha, clearly the postmodernists are just nonsense, junk. A machine can literally construct these kinds of essays from the nonsense that they typically speak. The odd thing was the folks that read the magazine, the postmodern magazine, were thrilled with the article. They thought it was really good. Okay, so this is funny, and this is, of course, is the scholarly hoax that he accomplished. But here was a next step was a couple of MIT students took his Dada engine, the algorithm, loaded it with scientific terms, ran the program. They came out with a scientific article, which they submitted to a science journal. And guess what? You tell me, what happened? The science journal was ready to publish. It was a great article. At which point the students, being a bit nervous, came clean with the journal, the editors, and said, just before you publish it, notice, this is how we made it. And the journal said, oh, you're right, we can't publish it, because that wouldn't be right. well, how about we do this? How about you write an article about how you did this, and then we'll simultaneously we'll publish it, but you explain what you did. That would be a good science article, right? Okay, so they did that. Well, so you end up, and by the way, you yourself can use this. If you played with this on my page where I talk about plagiarism, don't use plagiarism, but what the heck is plagiarism? One of the links I give you is this one right here, where you don't even have to use that one, but this one takes you to an online version of the Dada engine that you can use, and should be coming up momentarily here. Let me get rid of this. Get rid of this. I'll get rid of this. So this is the website, and notice on this website you have the option it will give you the option to print this or to save it as a PDF. But what we have is a term paper in postmodern speak. Here's your options coming up. It's pretty slow, actually. But so this is a term paper, and the title of the term paper is Surrealism and Neo-Textual Dialectic Theory. You even have an author. I don't know why you have an author, but and wow, we even get a position and everything. So it's point 1, dialectical pretextual theory and patriarchalist paradigm of consensus. Society is part of the futility of truth, says Debord. However, according to Porter, it is not so much society that is part of the futility of truth, but rather the defining characteristic and eventually the fatal flaw of society. A number of discourses concerning the role of the artist as observer may be revealed. Thus, the without-within distinction intrinsic to Stone's natural-born killers is also evident in Platoon, the movie. This is generated text. And in fact, the neatest thing is if I click refresh, and you know refresh will automatically just refresh the page as it is, right? Well, notice what happens when you click refresh on this page. You have a totally different term paper instantaneously, right? In fact, it's non-repeatable, so as far as I know, right? So basically, if you want to do a term paper on a postmodern topic, you could just run this and grab a copy, and no one else will have that copy. In fact, if anyone receives that from you and tries to do a search on the internet for it, they won't find it because it's not there. Okay? So if you want a free updated term paper whenever you need one, here's one. Of course, notice it reads like junk, actually, which is exactly the point that Sokal was trying to make, that these postmodernists, that's junk. What are they talking about? In defense of postmodernism, by the way, I would argue that French students, especially French students, I think you really need to be fluent in French, reading the texts of the postmodernist writers, become fluent in that language, right? People outside of the fluency of that language feel like it's just junk, but I bet within the context of a community of people that speak that language fluently, it's as comfortable and good as neuroscience. Yeah, you can change it again. The cultural paradigm of discourse in the works of Fellini. Deconstructing realism. Consensus of genre, etc. You know, so you get all kinds of stuff there. I myself, years ago, when I wrote this page, went to that site, grabbed this bit, focal lists power relations in the neotextual paradigm of discourse, and copied a certain part of it to this point. And I argue, this is brand new material. No one wrote it. It's generated by this algorithm. And notice, though, that algorithms not only can be used, depending on the vocabulary, for postmodern lecture, papers, scientific papers. I don't know which science journal and which particular topic they had used, but obviously you could use it. And guess what? If we go to ChatGPT today,